God Eternal Oketra versus Nekusar the Mindrazer. I suppose that's our card draw sorted out for this game. And maybe land tax is our mana sorted out for this game as well. Let's go in for land tax on our opening turn. God Eternal Oketra is a 5 mana mono white zombie god. A 3/6 with double strike. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a 4/4 black zombie token with vigilance. And we'll just go for the ramp now in Mind Stone. And then do we go Monastery Mentor or Thalia next turn? Our opponent's in a 3-colour deck, so they're likely to be playing a lot of non-basic lands, so I think we go in for Thalia. And they've got counter magic, so there's some more card draw for us. We get to draw 2 cards off the Arcane Denial, and that gets us into another land with Cavern of Souls. And now they have more lands than us, we can search for up to 3 basic lands. We're going to go for all 3 planes here. I want a mana crypt as well. Do they have counter magic is the question. Well, we'll get counter magic out of their hand at least. Well, they chose not to use it. There's nothing to say that they don't have removal. We'll get down the Skull Clamp and pass the turn over. I think if they blow up our God Eternal Oketra, then we are going to start putting it into the library, third from the top. Because I expect to see a lot of wheels from Nekusar. And that means that we'll draw into her really quickly. Things like Font of Mythos as well will draw us back into our commander really quickly. So I think we're going to be easily avoiding the command attacks with our commander this game. Also, it'll trigger the Skull Clamp if we have that on our commander, because usually they just go to the command zone, which doesn't count as dying, and therefore the Skull Clamp won't trigger. But in this case, our commander will die, so we will get the card draw in that instance. I'm just going to really thin out our deck here and grab 3 basics every time. We're going to have to discard them, but I'd rather not be drawing into basics. And then we draw even more cards with the Font of Mythos. I'd like to get down the Emiria the Sky Ruin because we have lots of access to planes now. Let's go for the Monastery Mentor. That gives us a zombie token. And then I think it's a case of playing the tap land and holding up the Teferi's Protection. Let's just swing in with our God Eternal Oketra. And Nekusar wants us to draw into lots of cards because it says every time we draw a card, it deals 1 damage to us. And Nekusar also has us draw an additional card during our draw step. So 2/4 for 5 mana in Grixis. We'll just get rid of a bunch of lands here, I think. The Orchestral Explorer will trigger our commander, so we'll keep that. And there's a Mind Crank. I'd like to get rid of that sooner rather than later because this is a combo piece. But they're not dealing any damage to us yet. It looks like they are just trying to hold up counter magic. And we are going to mill a card with Mind Crank because we were just dealt damage by the Mana Crypt. We milled a Stoneforge Mystic, a Benelish Marshal, that's an Anthem on a creature. And we got rid of a Plains as well during that mill for 3. Alright, we get into another lands and a Tithe. Our opponent has 1 more land than us, which means this Tithe will get us 2 more basics out of our library. Let's go for the Tithe here. Just really trying to thin out our library. And we'll also go in for the Orchestral Explorer. And this will get more basics out of our library as well. If there's one thing White's good at, it's grabbing planes out of the library. And the more planes we grab, the less likely we are to draw into them. Okay, so we can hold up Teferi's Protection, and then we'll have 2 mana left, so we might as well go for a Clamp on a Monk. And then we'll clamp our commander. And that will get some more commander damage through because Oketra's power will go up by 1. And then just discarding a bunch of planes again. Might be worth putting a Crucible of Worlds in this deck. Alright, just got rid of a bunch of lands and the Cathar's Crusade here. The Cathar's Crusade isn't going to be relevant because we've already got our opponent down to 9 life. They probably need to just wipe the board here. Yep, there's the Blasphemous Act. We'll see if they have counter magic for the Teferi's protection. And that looks like a Force of Will. Yep. What did they exile with that? They got rid of Jace's Archivist. That's a wheel on a creature. So that counters that. And let's see, we want to make sure this goes to the graveyard and to the library. That's right, and then that means God Eternal Oketra will hit the graveyard, and therefore we'll draw a couple of cards with the Skull Clamp. But Oketra will go into the library first, which means we draw into her next turn. Oketra is now the top card of our library because we've drawn into Restoration Angel and Tech Edge. Nightscape Familiar makes blue and red spells cost 1 less to cast. Now, actually, we need to dodge this Mana Crypt, don't we? Or the Mind Rack is going to have us mill our commander. So let's make sure that this goes to the command zone instead of the graveyard. And we win the flip anyway, so that's good. We will not use land tax because we don't want to shuffle our library. Alright, then we go for a plains. In for our commander, and then how many lands does our opponent have? They have 6. Yeah, we could have gone for a Knight of the White Orchid first actually, but it doesn't really matter. Let's go for the Blade Splicer and try and go wide on our opponent. And then in order to spread the threats around a little bit, I'm going to put the Clamp onto the Zombie Warrior. And then it's discarding a True Conviction. Don't think we're going to need that this game. Try and keep as many creature cards in hand as possible. A Mana Vault into a Mystical Tutor. And I suppose they just drew into the Mystical Tutor because they didn't do it during their upkeep. This looks like Rift mana, doesn't it? Yeah, they do have Cyclonic Rift mana up, but won't take us too much to rebuild from that. Oh, but what's this? A Cruel Ultimatum. Target opponent sacks a creature, discards 3 cards and loses 5 life. And then our opponent gets to return a creature card from the graveyard to their hand, draw 3 and gain 5 life. That's not really going to affect us too much, I don't think. I think we can just go wide on our opponent this turn, can't we? But I think I'll get down the Palace Jailer anyway. Win the flip again with Mana Crypt, and we might as well get some planes while we're at it. Oh, and that's exactly why we have the Walking Atlas in the deck, because we can get down an additional land every turn once we get a land tax going. But we're not going to make use of that this game. Let's go for the Palace Jailer to get the Monarchy and get rid of that chump blocker. And then it's time to swing in at our opponent. Okay, it's not quite a Cyclonic Rift, it's an Evacuation. So in that case, we'll just go for our commander again. It's a really great way to rebuild an army. And then we'll go for a Plains. And Skull Clamp the God Eternal Oketra. And then we'll make sure it hits the graveyard and the library, just in case our opponent has a Terminate. We've drawn plenty of cards this game, but we haven't been dealt any pain for it, because I think we've been too quick for our opponent, really. We'll ditch the Cloudstone Curio. The Atlas is going to be too slow now, I think. The Medallion we might keep. Tech Edge. Cavern of Souls can go. Knight of the White Orchid, and then, wow, there's still 2 more things we have to get rid of. Let's get rid of a Pearl Medallion and a Plains then. They do have 1 damage to them dealt every turn with that Mana Vault as long as it remains tapped. And with only 7 life, that is something they need to keep an eye on. And there's the Cruel Ultimatum. We have to sack a creature, discard 3, and lose 5 life. We are going to draw a couple of cards off of the Skull Clamp, so that'll replenish our hand a little bit. We have to get rid of 3 cards here. Let's go for Restoration Angel, Meteor Golem, and Austere Command. Skull Clamp goes on first so that we can get closer to our commander. We put that 3rd from the top, and then we draw 2 cards. And let's change the zones on this. We were dealt damage there, so God, Eternal Oketra does end up back in the command zone anyway. Yeah, I forgot about the damage that the Cruel Ultimatum dealt to us there. But we've got our opponent consistently on the back foot. And this Emeria the Sky Ruin might actually be relevant this game. I didn't think it would be. I thought this game would be over by now, but our opponent is managing to drag the game out longer than it ought to have been. Which is exactly what a control deck loves to do. Alright, Mind Crank. A Disenchant on the Mind Crank sounds good. Yeah, we'll go in for a Plains. And that means Emeria the Sky Ruin will trigger next turn. We can get a creature back from our graveyard straight into play. We'll get down the Caged Sun. That makes our Plains tap for 2 white. I say we get down our commander yet again. And then we can go for Disenchant onto the Mind Crank. And get down the Skull Clamp onto Oketra again for that little trick. And they still have our commander to face down now. And we can get through for lethal next turn if we get down this Anthem, Spear of Heliod. And we draw another card because we are still the Monarch. Oh, and it's an Emeria Shepherd, so we can really make use of our graveyard if we get her down. So let's go Stonecloaker. Coercive Portal we don't need. We only need 1 Plains, really. So we'll get rid of 2 of those. They decide not to put mana into the Mana Vault, so that's another damage to them. Okay, Obnixilis reignited. That is going to destroy our commander. We could really do with a Lightning Greaves, I think. We'll go for the same trick again. And we're not going to be dealt damage by the Mind Crank unless our opponent counters this Disenchant, so chances are we're going to be getting into our Oketra again when we draw into it next turn. Oh, and the White Mane Lion is really good with our commander. That means we can get a hell of a lot of zombie tokens into play. And the Vampiric Tutor, I don't know if they can draw anything this turn. They might just be trying to set themselves up for next turn. Now let's go to the end step. We will disenchant the Mind Crank. And apparently they don't have counter magic in hand, so we don't have to worry about whether or not we get bolted by this Mana Crypt. We'll go Emeria the Sky Ruin on something. Let's go for the Meteor Golem with that. And we're not going to use land tax because we don't want to shuffle our commander away. Meteor Golem comes back with Emeria the Sky Ruin. That blows up Obnixilis. We don't need them drawing any more cards with that. And then our Oketra is only going to cost 5 because we get around the commander tax. But it looks like they have counter magic. Now then, can she hit the graveyard from a counter? No, so in that case we want her to go into the command zone from a counter. Yeah, that's right. That way she won't get stuck in the graveyard. Although we could get her back with Emeria Shepherd, couldn't we? Yeah, actually, on second thoughts, let's have her go into the graveyard. Emeria Shepherd likes to see planes enter the field, and when she does, we get to reanimate a creature. Or actually, it might be just a permanent. It's a non-land permanent that she cares about, so let's go in for the planes. And I don't think there is anything else that we want to grab. We'll just go for the commander. Straight onto the battlefield, please. And then it might be worth grabbing that. Where is it? Walking Atlas. If we can start getting in lots of planes, yeah, that might be worth it. But first, we'll go for Oketra's Monument. I'd like a Swiftfoot Boots as well. We've got lethal on our opponent this turn, actually. We can clamp our God Eternal Oketra, and that makes 10 commander damage on our opponent. I was going to start playing around with White Mane Lion there, but we've got the win now, and this game's gone on long enough, so good game to our opponent. Oh, and they quit before we deal damage, that's not nice, but yeah. Anyway, that's Nekusar the Mindrazer doing some good control stuff there. They managed to drag that game out longer than we would have liked it to, but we were not doing what mono white does typically, actually. We were drawing lots of cards, getting into land drops every single turn, or nearly every single turn at least, and then continuing to just get down our commander. They didn't really seem to be able to keep that off the field, probably in no small part thanks to the Skull Clamp. We could clear the top 2 cards of our library and then the very next turn draw straight back into our commander and get her down for only 5 mana. The Font of Mythos did a lot of work for us as well. This is the trouble with Nekusar. You've got to be really fast if you're going to give your opponents a lot of card draw, because we were not punished at all for drawing all those cards. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed that. God Eternal Oketra versus Nekusar the Mindrazer game. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.